slowly come in. So I want to make sure that you don't run out of time.
Sure, perfect. Okay, I'll get started right now. So happy Thursday, everybody. My name is Ray Andrade. I am LMU's student engagement librarian. I am also an LMU alumnus, so it's my honor and pleasure to be with you today to talk a little bit about LMU's library. For about 25 minutes, I'm going to reserve the last 5 minutes for any questions that anybody here might have. So along with Q&A, what I'm really going to be covering is this agenda that we're looking at right now. So I'm going to take a few minutes to briefly talk about library spaces, followed by talking about collections and services, and then specific services that are geared towards graduate students. And then my personal department, library outreach. I'm from the library outreach department. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the outreach programs that we have year after year. And I guarantee you're probably going to be surprised at some of the stuff that the library has going on. And again, we're going to end with Q&A at the very end. So for many, many years, I've been saying that LMU's library has something very special going on. So finally, as of 2021, I'm able to back that up with something solid that happened earlier this year. So earlier this year, the ACRL, which stands for the Association for College and Research Libraries, that national association recognized LMU's library with the Excellence in Academic Libraries Award. So you're going to have to trust me on it. This is a big deal when it comes to the academic library world. This puts LMU's library in the company of libraries at Cornell and Harvard. You've probably heard of those institutions, right? Those are those large research institutions. So just to show you how good LMU's library is, we were nationally recognized with this award earlier this year. And the reasons for us earning that award is because of the vast amount of resources that we have to support the curriculum of LMU, our outreach programming, and our services, which I'm going to be really eager to talk about in just a moment. So everything that the library does, it's to fulfill LMU's mission. And that's how we were able to get this ACRL Excellence in Academic Libraries Award. So it's kind of a big deal given that LMU's campus has only one library. It's just the William H. Hannon Library, whereas other institutions might have like 10 libraries on their campus. LMU's got only one library, and yet we're on par with these big name universities as well. So anyway, let's get started talking about library spaces. So you might have seen the outside building on lots of websites from LMU, but if you were to step into the library building, the very first thing you would see is the first floor lobby, which right away gives you an appreciation for the kind of architectural design that went into this $65 million building. So the building itself is only about 10 years old, but by all means, we still consider it a new modern building. So lots of beautiful spaces throughout the building, but not just spaces, but we also feature a lot of technology in the vast spaces that the library has. So over 80 Macintosh computers that are also dual boot that you could use as PC computers if you prefer a PC. On the second floor, we have one of our most popular study spaces. If you look closely in the background, that is a real fireplace. And it's not the only fireplace, believe it or not. We actually have a couple of fireplaces inside the library building. So what you're looking at right there is what is one of our more popular study spaces. But of course, we have different kinds of study spaces all throughout the building. So this is another snapshot of another area on the second floor. So you could see spaces designed for quiet group study. You could see some spaces towards the left that are more for individual study as well. But regardless of where you are in the library building studying, you're guaranteed to have a spectacular view either of the campus or of West LA and the marina and the Pacific Ocean as well. So along with open spaces, we also have closed spaces for study. So we feature approximately 33 group study rooms. So these group study rooms they come in great handy because you're able to reserve the study rooms up to 2 weeks in advance. All of our group study rooms feature whiteboard walls like you see in this picture. And I already said you could reserve them for up to 2 weeks in advance and for up to 4 hours at a time. So for graduate students, I became aware that what a lot of graduate students do is they like to come to campus on the weekends and park really close to the library and make a reservation well ahead of time to use some of our study rooms as well for group study. So moving on to the third floor of the library, we have something very special called the Archives and Special Collections Department. And it always pains me whenever I do these presentations that I could never do this department justice in just 1 minute in talking about them, because they have really, really spectacular treasures in this department. If you're wondering what's our most valuable treasure, it's easy to say William Shakespeare's First Folio. So all of William Shakespeare's collected works in one volume, first edition, valued at a cool $10 million. It's at your disposal to peruse that volume in that department. But we also have lots of other treasures as well. One of my personal favorites is the first illustrated edition of Dante's Inferno. That's my personal favorite. We have objects from the Civil War, a lot of that. We also have, this is kind of nerdy, but we have the biggest postcard collection west of the Mississippi River. So we have over 1 million postcards, which come in great handy, especially when it comes to history department projects. Also for marketing, for any business majors out there who want to like examine the history of marketing. A lot of those postcards have like marketing on them and advertisements. So anyway, it's a collection that comes in great handy. So if any students ever want to visit that department, you could always set up a one-on-one meeting with the librarian who works in that department. But otherwise, you're also welcome to attend any special event that's featuring an exhibit in that department. So at the beginning of every semester, we have an exhibit grand opening. And in the space that you're looking at right now, that's the public gallery. It's always open, no need to make an appointment. You could drop in anytime. So every semester we have different exhibits on display. And also on the third floor, we have this huge atrium or this huge lobby space where we, yet again, more spaces that we dedicate towards exhibits as well. So that's a little bit of what's going on the third floor. But a couple of other spaces that the library has, some people like to jokingly say that the most important part about the library is that it has a Starbucks inside. I'm not going to hate on that comment because I would be a liar if I said that I didn't use Starbucks myself all the time. We need that caffeine, right? So we have a Starbucks inside the building. Again, that's in really good handy for any graduate students coming to study on the weekends. Starbucks is usually open whenever the library is open as well. If anybody needs really extra quiet space, I recommend the third floor. Just for sure, get away from the first floor because the first floor is by far the noisiest floor I've ever encountered in my career. So get to that third floor if you want some quiet space. And I already spoke a little bit about the group study rooms. And I already mentioned that there's a parking lot kind of across the street from the library as well. So that in a nutshell is our library spaces. A really quick word about our library hours. Once upon a time, before the pandemic, our library used to be open 24 hours a day, 5 days a week. We weren't exactly 24/7. We would only close on Friday nights and Saturday nights. But otherwise, our awesome library is at your disposal 24 hours a day. Well, it would be if you choose to attend LMU for your graduate program. So hopefully this entices you just a little bit. But right now we're not open 24 hours, but still you're looking at our hours on the screen. We are open still most of the week, 8 in the morning till midnight for most of the time. So by the way, if anybody has, before I switch gears into the next segment, if anybody has any questions about anything I've said so far, please don't be shy to either drop your question into the chat, or we're going to keep it casual and informal. If you prefer to unmute yourself and just speak up, by all means, feel free to interrupt me at any time as well. Okay. And if there aren't any questions at this time, I'm going to go ahead and talk a little bit about our collections and services. So what we're looking at here is a screenshot. It's not a live shot of our homepage, but if you were to Google the words LMU Library, you would easily find what you're looking at right now. So first, I'm going to talk about our collections. So no surprise, we're a library. Of course, we have the books, right? But what you might be surprised to learn is that our library actually has more electronic books than print books, more than physical books. And that was a fact even before the pandemic. So as far as physical books go, we have over 500,000 books. And I haven't mentioned this yet, but our library has a two-floor basement. It's a gigantic basement where about 66% of our physical collections are kept. So most of our physical books are actually underground in the basement, and above ground are the books that are either the newest or the most frequently used books. So if you later on become a graduate student at LMU and you're browsing the shelves, just keep in mind that's just the tip of the iceberg. So I would really recommend consulting the online catalog that you're looking at right here. So this is the website, and if you notice the blue rectangle towards the left, it says catalog, right? So that would be the way to search for physical books or electronic books and media items like DVDs. Yes, we still have DVDs, or any streaming videos. And as far as streaming goes, like you might have guessed, we have a lot more streaming videos than DVDs. So the last I heard was like, we're approaching about 200,000 streaming videos that support the curriculum of every discipline at LMU. So aside from things you could access from the catalog, obviously we also have a lot of journals, especially electronic. So by and large, most of our journals are available in electronic format. And I don't expect you to memorize any numbers here, but we have at least 70,000 journals that are at your disposal, all to support the curriculum of all the graduate programs at LMU and the undergraduate programs as well, of course. So as far as journals go, over 70,000. And the number of databases that we have is what I would say really puts us at the level of like Cornell and Harvard, because the number of databases that we have is kind of ridiculous. We have over 300, which really baffles me for a university the size of LMU. So we have about 350 databases, and it could easily get overwhelming. So in a moment, I'm going to talk about ways that you could easily navigate resources like our databases, our journals, our catalog, our electronic books, all of that kind of stuff. So if you look at the bottom left, there's a white rectangle that says LibGuides. So that's short for library guides. So these library guides were created by any of the 25 librarians that we have. I believe the latest count is about 25 librarians. So library guides, basically, in the interest of time, I'm not going to actually show you what a library guide looks like. But when you consider that we have over 300 databases in total, obviously you don't want to sift through hundreds and hundreds of databases just to find the databases that are relevant to your particular graduate program, right? So what the librarians have done, they've created library guides where they highlight the top 5 or the top 10 databases in your specific graduate program. And not just databases, but they've also done the same thing for the best journals that are related to your program, and the best databases for electronic books related to your graduate programs as well. So that's a little bit about library guides. I mentioned that they were created by librarians, and I would be remiss if I didn't mention that every graduate program at LMU has a librarian that's dedicated specifically to that graduate program. So I know, for example, somebody dropped in the chat that they're interested in marital and family therapy. Well, for that person who would do that program, his name is Alexander Justice. Alexander would be your future best friend at LMU's library. For those of you who are in the School of Education, Elisa Slater would become your best friend at the library. Basically, that's the librarian who's in charge of basically collecting all of the resources that the library has to support the curriculum of those programs. But that's not all. Now we're going to shift into services that the library has. At the graduate level, my personal opinion would be that the best service that we have to offer you is one-on-one research consultations with a librarian. So even before the pandemic, we were offering one-on-one consultations virtually. So if you're old school like me, if you prefer to meet with a librarian face-to-face, of course you could still do that in person. Given today's situation, if you're more comfortable meeting virtually, and to be honest, it's sometimes more convenient to just click on a link, right? You're more than welcome to meet one-on-one with a librarian as well. So again, regardless of what program you're doing, there's a librarian who's basically kind of an expert as far as what the library has to support that field. And you're always welcome to set up a one-on-one consultation. So if you ask me, given those tuition dollars that you're paying, that's the best bang for your buck. That's the kind of service that you're paying for. So aside from those one-on-one consultations, which require an appointment, the next service that I really wanted to point out is almost in the middle of the page. It's our Ask a Librarian live chat service. So again, even far before the pandemic happened, we were offering this service 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And I oftentimes feel like I'm spoiled at LMU. I oftentimes think like, oh, every university library offers 24/7 chat, right? No, that's not the case at all. But at LMU, thankfully, we've always had the support of university administrators who are always supportive of the library and our financial requests to support the students and to offer these services 24 hours a day, etc. So usually to the undergraduate students, I like to promote the 24/7 live chat service as our bread and butter, right? Especially because the undergraduate students, like they're very, very new to using a university library. But my audience for today, I know that you're all familiar with university libraries. So again, the top two services I would recommend to my audience today would be the one-on-one research consultations and the live chat service, especially if you're in a pinch. Of course, I can't condone beginning your research at the last minute, but God forbid if you do procrastinate and don't get started on your research until much later, and you need to talk to a librarian at 2 in the morning, 3 in the morning, there's a librarian ready to talk to you. Oh, and that actually is a real librarian. It is not a robot. It's not a bot. It's not an automated program at all. It's a flesh and blood librarian who's always monitoring that 24/7 live chat. So other services that we offer, if you notice right below the live chat box, there's a rectangle that says Get Help. So the library has a Get Help page that looks like this. So again, the biggest thing that you see is that Ask a Librarian live chat, right? Because we really like to promote that service because it's so useful. But if you also notice towards the top right quadrant, there's research assistance. So if you're in the neighborhood, if you prefer to meet on the spot with a librarian face-to-face, we call it the information desk. Some libraries still call it the reference desk. But if you were to walk into the library, one of the first desks that you would see is called the information desk. And whenever the library is open, there's always a librarian there ready to help you on the spot, face-to-face. So just below the information desk, I already talked about research consultations. This would be one of the ways that you would begin to set that up. So you could click on the previous page where I showed you how to get to the Get Help button on the bottom. You would click on Get Help and then click on research consultation. So that's another service. And the library also has a YouTube channel. So if you prefer to watch a bunch of YouTube videos to show you how to navigate the library's resources, you're more than welcome to do that. YouTube is my favorite page. It's very handy. I'm more of an audiovisual learner. So we do have a long series of how-to videos on the YouTube page as well. So I'll wait to see if there's any questions regarding the library's collections or services. Otherwise, if there aren't any questions regarding collections and services, I'll move forward and talk about services specific to graduate students. Okay, so I'm going to talk about some of the services that are specific to graduate students. So if you were to become a graduate student at LMU, by the time you're about to finish, you're going to be working either on a thesis, or if you're in the School of Education, you might be working on a doctorate, right? So you might want to make your scholarship available to the planet. And through the internet, our library has this thing called Digital Commons. So if you were to submit your work, you're not required to, but if you wanted to submit your thesis or your doctorate to the library for the sake of making your scholarship available to the world and hopefully get cited by other researchers in your field, you could talk to the library about submitting your work into something called Digital Commons. And one of the nice things about LMU's library is that unlike other universities, you, the student, would retain the copyright. That is your intellectual work. And we stand by that. The library nor LMU would claim ownership of your work. You would remain the owner of your work. So aside from thesis and dissertation submissions, we also have this thing called the Graduate Library Research Award. So if anybody here would appreciate $1,000 in return for demonstrating how you used a variety of library resources to work on your thesis or your doctorate or any other project for that matter, you might qualify for a grand prize of $1,000. And if you work in a group, the group might earn $1,500. And we have a couple of honorable mentions for $450 a pop as well. So it's a way to incentivize graduate students to like use the multitude of resources and services that our library offers. And lastly, graduate students could borrow up to 50 books from the library for the entire semester as well. So a quick word about our outreach programming. I know I only have about 6 minutes left, so I'll breeze through this really quick so I could save at least 3 minutes for Q&A. So this is where I'm totally biased because I work in the library's outreach department. So this is where you might be a little bit surprised by what the library has going on. So of course, like any other library, you might encounter panel events or author events at LMU's library, but we also like to have a little bit of fun. So one of our most popular series, about 10 years running now, is called Faculty Pub Night. So as a graduate student, you're probably over 21 years old. So you would be welcome to attend any of our faculty pub nights to witness once a month. They happen once a month. We invite a professor to come to the library and talk about their latest publication. That's the play on words right there. Talk about their latest publication in a totally casual, informal, chill format. And we hook you up with free suds or free wine and free food at these events as well. So that's faculty pub nights. So for those of you who are for sure locked in to be a graduate student at LMU, you might want to follow us on social media, and I'll show you how to do that in a second. Aside from faculty pub nights, every year we have something called the Haunting of Hannon Library, and this is actually going down tomorrow. So tomorrow is the first night of our Haunting of Hannon Library event. Every year we usually do 2 events. We typically do a kind of like an adult, scarier version of the haunting. But typically, especially before the pandemic, we would do a family-friendly version of the Haunted Library event too. That's a little more kid-friendly. But again, if you're a student, I encourage you to come to this event. It used to be open to the public, but at this moment, because of safety concerns, we can't open the library to the public at this moment. So also for finals time, to fight any stress that our students are feeling, any anxiety or any stress that students are feeling for finals, we usually bring in either therapy puppies or therapy kittens. We've also done yoga goats. We're working on that for this year as well. So yeah, we do a lot of fun stuff during finals time. And usually every year in October, for everybody, not just for undergraduate students, but for graduate students, undergraduate students, for anybody who wants to become familiar with the library spaces and services in a really fun atmosphere. Every year we have a library open house. So that happened earlier in October as well. And we had hundreds of students in attendance who had a blast. So that's another fun event that happens every year as well. So if anybody here would like to follow the library, especially to find out about when you could get hooked up with free beer at faculty pub night, or when you could get scared at the Haunting of Hannon Library, you could simply find us on social media with our handle at LMU Library. So with that, I thank you so much for your time. And I'll be happy to use the next 2 or 3 minutes to answer any questions that you might have.
Thank you so much, Ray. After every presentation, I'm like, I'm gonna go hang out in the library all day.
Yeah, tomorrow's going to be pretty intense with that haunted library event. Those events, yeah, I think it's the funnest event of the year. And that's when people hear about things like the haunted library or faculty club nights or stuff like that. It provides that a little bit of that wow factor that people really do not expect out of a university library. So I'm keeping in mind how like sometimes we have graduate students who it might have been a couple of years since they've been in school, who just have like this very stereotypical image and understanding of a university library. Forget that at LMU. That's not what we have going on at LMU at all. it's part of the reason why we got that ACRL Excellence in Academic Libraries Award as well, because we try to go above and beyond, not just services and collections, but also outreach programming as well. So that's what brought me here today. I'm part of the outreach team. So it's been a pleasure to talk to everybody about the library. So thank you, Emily. And thank you, everybody. Oh, there is a question. Is the library parking lot free? So Emily, correct me if I'm wrong on this one, but my understanding is that parking is free on the weekends. Right. I believe that parking is still free on the weekends. And that's why I mentioned earlier that a lot of graduate students, they like to come to campus on the weekends when they don't have to worry about paying for parking. And during the week, I think
during the week they do. But I'll say as a student, you can buy like a semester parking pass. And I have a graduate student worker who goes to the library every single day. She wakes up, she goes to the library, then she'll come to work, then she'll go back to the library.
Oh, yeah.
So the library is definitely a home for a lot of our graduate students. So when it comes to parking, if you end up paying the parking fee, you might as well use it. You might as well come every day. So
for sure. And then especially back when we were open 24 hours a day, like I know, especially some of the undergrads, like they would, pull off all-nighters. It literally did become their second home.
That Starbucks helps.
Yeah, and I did get a question from someone asking if there's any way that the library will be open to the public. First up, my basic answer is yes, but then the bigger question for me, honestly, is when. Like we don't know yet when that's going to happen, because obviously we're still in this situation where we don't know what policies are being dished out by the LA County Health Department or the city of Los Angeles as well. But I know that in time, we want to go back to where we once were, which was as inclusive as possible, which meant not only being open to the public, but also being open 24 hours a day. So that's just the culture that LMU's library has, that just reflects LMU's culture of inclusivity as well. So I really appreciate that question as well. And I think there's another question from Madison. What are the security measures? Do you need a student ID to enter? Yes. So at this moment, yes, you need a student ID at this moment, if you're a student, you don't need your student ID to swipe in. And sorry if this all sounds confusing, but before the pandemic, when we were open 24 hours a day, we were only open to the public up until 10 p.m. because of security reasons, right? We want to keep our students and community safe. So before the pandemic, when we were open 24 hours a day, after 10 p.m., the doors would lock to the public. And so for students could use their school ID card to swipe into the building after 10 p.m. So I'm really glad that question came up as well. Is there a booking fee to book a study room? No, that's absolutely free. Or another way you could think about it is your tuition dollars are paying for those study rooms. But otherwise, no, there's no fee to book a study room. That's already included in your tuition dollars. Good questions, really good questions. But Emily, I don't want to go over time if there's another session that the students should get to.
Yes, so the Office of National and International Fellowships presentation has just started, so I'm going to run over there. But thank you so much, Ray. I always appreciate and I love your presentation. So
it's always
great
my pleasure,
to be
Emily.
here.
Always my pleasure. Thank you so much, Emily. Thank you, everybody. Have a good day.
Bye. Thank you.
You're welcome.